Hi there. I recently put out a 3-part series, The Basics of Meditation, and then I realised there's a relevant 4th part to share. So here's a little PS to my 3-part series, because I realise it seems very relevant to talk about the importance of using meditation to enhance our ability to be really connected in our day-to-day lives in a meaningful way. The tenet "be here now" is so central to meditation and mindfulness, and it really is about being fully present with what actually is in the present moment, to be here now. Moving toward a state of deep acknowledgement, really, and deep acceptance of what actually is. And that state of deep acceptance means in and of itself that we are without judgment, or at least acknowledging where we find our judgments, because it kind of is very much in our nature at the moment to have judgments. So that non-judgmental stance of mindfulness is aspirational and inspirational, and the process of practice, I think, helps us discover where we're not yet that, and become more accepting that that's the way it is, so that we can then move towards changing that. Ultimately, the goal is to come to know and see ourselves much better. And occasionally we see people using meditation as a way to avoid and deny our judgments, and that is not helpful. That is not growthful. To deny what is sets us up for disaster, really. Potential disaster. It's not a growth path, I guess, is what I'm wanting to say. So ultimately, if we're wanting to see and know ourselves better, we're working towards getting that, like a 360-degree picture of the truth. And at some point, that growth trajectory really does require the presence of like-minded peers and teachers who can help us see our blind spots, and also for us to have a thirst to see our blind spots, not just a desire to pretend we're all shiny. And it's tempting, I think, at times to hang out in our strengths. We often do that as adults. We find our area of expertise and hone that, and we can do that at the expense of having that real growth, of trying different things, learning different things about ourselves, being a beginner, allowing ourselves to not be the expert, to be in humility of, I don't know what I'm doing here, but I'm willing to learn. And that's such a productive growth mindset that we sometimes cheat ourselves out of. Anyway, mindful meditation, it's great, but it's not meant to be used as a practice of escapism. That would be my cautionary PS at this point. It's really best used as a way to know thyself, which has been recommended by sages from, I don't know, the beginning of documented times, to know who you are. Know your strengths and your weaknesses. Know what it is that we're trying to refine in our character so that we can improve. I know it's tempting at times to use meditation or mindfulness as an escapism. And I've certainly seen that even in general therapy groups. I remember hearing a client describe, we were reviewing kind of homework. How did you go with mindfulness this week? Were you able to practice? And this person was saying, oh yes, I was so mindful this morning. I drove to work. The traffic didn't bother me one bit. I was looking at all the lovely leaves, and I barely even remember the traffic signals. And of course, we then said about gently helping this person realize that they'd not been mindful. They'd been kind of off in a bliss state, or almost a dissociative experience, which when you're driving is potentially quite dangerous, to say the least. So this is a common pitfall, I think, is when people use the practice just to extend further and further into spiritual realization or bliss states, and in a way that isn't grounded. Ideally, we want to be grounded so that any new realizations we have can inform how we live a day-to-day life that makes a positive and ethical impact on the planet, in our own lives, and the people we interact with. It's almost a spot the difference exercise in some ways. You know, if we have a morning meditation practice where we're connecting, really deeply connecting in the present moment and connecting to some sense of our best potential, of how we could best be contributing, then the usefulness of that imagery or that sense of potential is to then look at, well, what actually is. If I could be in that much equanimity or that much acceptance, where am I not that yet? And how do I use that understanding of higher potential to inform tracking towards that? It's like, gosh, if I could be an even more loving person, these are the bits within me that are not yet on board with that. These are the bits within me that get irritated over silly things or that whatever our particular pitfalls are. So it's kind of a key of like, great, I'm going to set about working on that in my character. And then at the end of the day, we can come back to that really aligned, centered, grounded space and go, gosh, how did I go? How did I go? Am I making improvements? Is this working? Is this working? What would I like to change? So that can be like a really, an honest snapshot of ourselves, not beating ourselves up with a big stick and not going, oh, I'm so wonderful, I'm there yet. I'm there already. It's more of an honest look at, what do I need to work on? How can I improve? And we can always improve. There's a constant state of refinement living a day-to-day life. So I would caution, if you're involved in a practice or with a group that promotes using meditation as an avoidance mechanism or escapism. There certainly have been some organisations that really promote meditation almost as another form of escapism or the pursuit of feeling good for the sake of feeling good, which is a bit like art for art's sake. So personally, it's a word of caution from me if you're around groups or classes where the goal is all about the pursuit of feeling good, because that kind of escapism or hedonistic pursuit rings a few alarm bells about potential unclarity that's going on there. I've seen this escapism meditation practice in ways that are obvious and in ways that are more subtle. It's a term that's been called spiritual bypassing. It was coined by John Welwood back in the 80s. He coined that phrase, spiritual bypassing. It's kind of using spiritual explanations to avoid dealing with complex psychological issues. It's a tendency to kind of sidestep facing unresolved emotions or psychological wounds or unfinished developmental tasks. If you come across any writing by John Welwood, it's probably worth a good look at. He's a Buddhist practitioner with a good deal of psychological clarity who noticed this trend of people using spiritual explanations almost as a defense mechanism, as an excuse to not work out their character weaknesses. And we all have character weaknesses, areas where we can improve, whether we're quick to anger or quick to always want to keep the peace, or quick to assume that we know something, or quick to assume that we have no clue, what would little old me know, or wherever we have a set style of reacting, that's getting in the way of wisdom. If you're reacting, it's some measure of amygdala fear-based response. I'm reacting. So we haven't really necessarily even heard or assessed or taken in the whole situation. So you want to be able to pause and respond from some kind of high vibration of love and wisdom, really. Wisdom would be a good goal for where we want to respond from. And wherever we're not yet doing that, there are areas for self-improvement. But sometimes when people spend very long periods of time in meditative practices that aren't grounded and being arranged in a kind of clear and grounded fashion, they can be overly focused on whatever the perceived ideal state is without acknowledging current reality. So that is dangerous. Similar to my client who's not paying attention behind the wheel. We want to be grounded in reality. Otherwise we become almost like someone in an abusive relationship who continues to explain away the behaviour of their abuser because they see their potential, or they hope the person will change. It's much more important that we're in an active, grounded, present, self-determining role in our lives. And if we're not acknowledging what's happening in the on-the-ground reality, the day-to-day reality, we're kind of useless. Even if we are having wonderful insights in meditation, we've got no way to implement those if we're ignoring the current on-the-ground reality. So we need to bridge both in order to effect any real change in our lives. There's no point wishing I was somewhere else and imagining I'm already somewhere else if I'm not there yet. We set ourselves up for a constant cycle of disappointment. Can't really express how important that is, to have an integrated life to the best of our ability. And this is where we need often mentors and good peers in our lives. It's not helpful to be using meditation just to chase a high. We can put ourselves in a position of denying reality when the truth is that is part of our human growth and potential is that difficult emotions arise and they're to be worked through, not escaped by using alcohol or sugar or other drugs or even meditation. There's usually learning where there's an uncomfortable emotion, and numbing out and avoiding is not really different to other addictions, whether it's alcohol or meditation. I mean, they are different, but similarly in function they can be used to hamper our growth. As part of our growth practice, meditation should be grounded, present, reflective. So some of the signs of spiritual bypassing would be living in states of idealism, feeling detached from reality, focusing on spirituality and ignoring present circumstances, being overly optimistic. And we've probably all had that friend who's just a bit of a Pollyanna and not seeing what's actually happening, pretending things are fine when they're not, or assuming that we can overcome all problems just by reframing and thinking positively. And those, I guess, are the main ones. And of course the good old, defense mechanisms like denial or repression. And that's a dangerous thing. We've often seen ones who would repress their anger and the stereotypical "I'm fine" from someone who clearly is angry. It's an uncomfortable emotion, but better dealt with than suppressed, repressed, or trying to escape away from it. The bypassing is often related to some of the New Age movements where people are encouraged to tolerate things that are not okay, where spiritual truths can become an excuse for bad behaviour. Certainly some of the free love movement of the 60s was, instead of becoming about an open exchange of love and mutual respect in humanity, it became a bit more debauched in a manner that wasn't uplifting to humanity. So, or we see self-appointed gurus who we find out later are doing nefarious things on the side. They might be saying amazing things from centre stage, but they're not really walking the walk when it comes down to it. Wherever there's a huge gap between what I recommend and what I'm actually doing, there's some spiritual bypassing in the mix. There's another, somewhere in there, John Welwood said, if you want to know how enlightened a person really is, ask their spouse. You find out the truth of somebody's character in their everyday moments, not in their high moments of meditation. Know yourself all the way through. Know yourself beyond your thoughts. Know who you are and know your potential, and enjoy working your way towards that potential in a really grounded and integrated manner, as well-rounded as possible. I'll leave you with a nice poem from John Welwood, since I've referred to him a few times today. He said, "Forget about enlightenment. Sit down wherever you are and listen to the wind singing in your veins. Feel the love, the longing, the fear in your bones. Open your heart to who you are right now. Not who you would like to be, not the saint you are striving to become, but the being right here before you, inside you, around you. All of you is holy. You are already more and less than whatever you can know. Breathe out, touch in, let go." So here's to using meditation to know more of the truth, not as an instrument of avoidance. Thanks for listening.